I think by marrying Camilla, Charles hopes that he is going to secure the future of the royal family. I'm afraid I can't agree with him. I think that by marrying Camilla, Charles is taking the royal family into dangerous new territory. Camilla is going to become the most senior woman in the country after the Queen. That's a heck of a job.
The door opened and King Charles stopped dead. Queen Camilla was not alone. Across the private sitting room stood a man whose presence inside that tightly controlled royal space raised an immediate question. Why was he there, and why had Camilla arranged the meeting without Charles knowing? For several seconds, nobody moved. The man lowered his eyes. Camilla remained seated, staring at Charles as though she had just realized that the one person she never wanted walking through that door had finally arrived. Charles did not shout. He did not need to. His silence was heavier than anger. His eyes moved from Camilla to the stranger, then back again. The atmosphere inside the room had changed completely. Whatever had been discussed moments earlier was now trapped beneath the weight of one uncomfortable question. Who was this man? The explanation that followed sounded simple. He was an old confidant, someone Camilla had known for years, someone who had reasons to speak with her privately. Nothing improper had happened according to the account Camilla gave, but there was one problem. The meeting had not been openly recorded in the way a normal royal appointment would have been. It had been arranged quietly, away from the ordinary flow of palace activity. And that detail changed everything. Hi viewers, if someone you trusted was secretly meeting another person behind your back, would you want to know the truth, even if that truth could completely destroy your relationship? Tell the truth in the comments. Would you confront them immediately, or would you stay silent until you had proof? And if you believe Charles deserves to know exactly what was happening inside his own palace, like this video, share it and subscribe. Because staying silent when something feels wrong only gives the secret more time to grow. Charles's first instinct was not to accuse Camilla of an affair, it was to understand why the meeting had been hidden. That distinction mattered. Rumors surrounding royal relationships can spread quickly, often long before anyone knows what actually happened. But this was different. The issue sitting in front of Charles was not merely gossip. It was the existence of a private encounter that had apparently been kept outside his knowledge. The stranger was eventually shown out, but the questions remained inside. Charles wanted the palace records checked. Who had authorized the visit? When had the man entered? Who knew he was coming? And most importantly, had this happened before? That final question opened a door far more disturbing than the one Charles had just walked through. The first review reportedly uncovered other references to private meetings. None of them, taken individually, proved an affair. There was no single document capable of answering the question that had begun to consume Charles.
Nobody really wants to poke into the murky past and history of Charles and Camilla's relationship. The word adultery seems to have been Tipexed out. But the truth of the matter is that they did have an adulterous relationship, and that in 1975...
Yet together, the entries created a pattern that was increasingly difficult to dismiss. There had been other visits, other conversations, other occasions when Camilla had apparently been able to meet the same confidant without Charles being aware. The timing made the situation even more uncomfortable. Some meetings appeared to have taken place during periods when Camilla had publicly been occupied elsewhere. Others were described as routine private engagements. On their own, they could have meant almost nothing. But then investigators noticed something unusual. Certain details surrounding the visits appeared incomplete. The records did not simply raise suspicion about the man. They raised suspicion about the secrecy. Charles was now faced with a choice. He could accept Camilla's explanation and close the matter, or he could continue looking until he understood why a series of apparently private meetings had been hidden from him. He chose to keep looking, and that decision would soon uncover something neither Charles nor the palace had expected. Because the most important discovery was not the number of times the mysterious man had entered the royal orbit. It was what appeared beside one of those entries. A confidential note, a meeting time, a private location, and a warning that suggested Camilla and the man had been protecting something from someone. The question was no longer whether they had met. They clearly had. The question was why. And somewhere inside the palace records was the answer that could determine whether Camilla had merely kept a personal conversation from Charles, or whether she had been hiding something capable of changing everything between them. The palace records had answered one question, but they had opened a far more dangerous one. There had not been one unexplained meeting. There had been several. And when the dates were placed beside Camilla's public schedule, the pattern became difficult to ignore. The same private confidant appeared repeatedly, sometimes within days of major royal engagements, sometimes at hours when the palace would normally have been almost completely quiet. None of those entries by themselves proved wrongdoing, but together they created the kind of pattern that makes even experienced aides stop talking and start looking twice. Charles wanted every available record pulled together: visitor logs, private appointments, security entries, messages connected to the man's visits. The instruction was simple. Nothing was to be discarded, summarized, or explained away before he had seen the original information himself. What emerged was unsettling. The first meeting had apparently taken place months before the confrontation that had just shaken the palace. It had been recorded under an ordinary description, the kind of wording that would attract almost no attention from someone reading hundreds of royal appointments. Yet the visitor's identity matched the same man Charles had found with Camilla. Then another entry appeared, and another. The meetings were not identical. Their locations changed, their durations varied. Some were brief, others lasted long enough to raise questions about what could possibly require so much privacy. Charles studied the dates. There was something else. The meetings seemed to become more frequent as time passed. That discovery changed the emotional temperature of the investigation. If the encounters had happened once, Camilla could have explained them as an old friendship, a private consultation, or a personal matter. But repeated meetings created a different problem. Why had Charles never been told? That question followed him through the palace.
She was the villain. She was the third person in the marriage. She needed to rehabilitate her image.
You and your brother both directly asked your dad not to marry Camilla.
Yes,
Why?
we didn't think it was necessary. We thought that it was going to cause more harm than good, and that if he was now with his person, that surely that's enough. Why go that far when you don't necessarily need to?
Meanwhile, the mysterious man remained almost invisible in public life. He did not appear beside Camilla at official functions. He was not part of her visible working circle. He did not have the kind of public position that would naturally explain repeated private access. Yet he kept appearing in the records. Someone had been making room for him. Someone had been allowing the meetings to happen. And someone had decided Charles did not need to know. That was the point when the investigation moved beyond visitor records. Private correspondence became important. According to the accounts surrounding the story, messages between Camilla and the man contained phrases that sounded harmless when isolated, but deeply troubling when placed beside the secret meetings. There were references to timing, discretion, and waiting. One exchange appeared to suggest that something could not be discussed openly until the right moment. Another message was even more revealing. It suggested that Charles was not supposed to know yet. Those words changed the entire investigation. Yet they still did not prove an affair. That distinction mattered. Royal gossip has always fed on fragments. A photograph can become a scandal. A private conversation can become a headline. A familiar face leaving a residence can become a theory repeated thousands of times. But suspicion is not proof. Charles knew that. What he wanted was evidence that could answer a much harder question. What exactly were they hiding? The palace team began reconstructing the timeline. They compared the private meetings with Camilla's known movements. They examined periods when she had been away from Charles, occasions when schedules had changed unexpectedly, and dates when the mysterious man had apparently appeared near royal residences. The deeper they looked, the stranger the pattern became.
A lot depends on how she perceives herself, how she uses her new position. It's an enormously influential one. It rather depends, to be brief, on whether she takes herself rather grandly or whether she keeps a sense of proportion.
One meeting had been arranged shortly before a significant family gathering. Another appeared after Camilla had canceled a previously expected engagement. A third occurred during a period when Charles had been occupied elsewhere. Again, none of these details established misconduct, but they made coincidence increasingly difficult to accept. Then investigators found something that shifted the story in another direction. The confidential entries did not simply describe conversations. They appeared to reference a personal matter, something sensitive, something that Camilla did not want discussed inside the normal palace machinery. That discovery created a new possibility. Perhaps the man was not there because of a romantic relationship. Perhaps he was there because Camilla needed help with something she believed could not be entrusted to ordinary royal channels. Charles now faced a more complicated suspicion. If Camilla had been meeting another man secretly, there could be an obvious explanation. But if she had been hiding a deeply personal problem, why choose this particular person? What did he know? What did Camilla believe he could protect? And why had the secret continued for so long? The questions multiplied faster than the answers. Then came the detail that reportedly unsettled Charles most. One of the meetings had been followed by a change in the way another palace appointment was recorded. A normal entry appeared to have been replaced by a much vaguer description that did not prove anyone had tampered with the records. But it raised an uncomfortable possibility. Someone may have wanted the trail to become harder to follow. By this point, Charles was no longer looking at a single unexplained encounter. He was looking at a chain of decisions. A meeting, a private message, a missing explanation, another meeting, another unexplained entry. And behind all of it, the same man. The palace atmosphere grew tense. Staff members who normally moved through royal corridors without hesitation became careful about what they said. Questions were answered with fewer words. Schedules were reviewed twice. Information was passed only to those who needed it. And then Charles received one final piece of correspondence. It was short. There was no romantic declaration, no confession, no obvious admission of betrayal. Instead, it contained a warning that seemed to refer to a secret that had not yet been revealed. That was the moment the story changed. Because Charles had entered this investigation believing he might be uncovering an affair. Now he had to consider something more unsettling. Camilla might have been protecting a secret so personal that she believed even the king could not be allowed to know. And if that was true, the man in the private room was not necessarily the scandal. He might have been the key. The next step was no longer to examine where the man had been. It was to find out why Camilla had trusted him with something she had deliberately kept from Charles. That question would lead directly to the confrontation. But before Charles could demand the answer, another discovery appeared in the records. A date, a location, and a private meeting that Camilla had never mentioned at all. This time there was no obvious, innocent explanation. Charles now had enough information to confront her again, and when he did, he would not ask who the man was. He would ask the question Camilla had been trying to avoid from the beginning. What exactly had she been hiding from her husband? By then, the possibility of a simple misunderstanding was becoming harder to sustain.
The whole thing about having a royal family is that they pay their dues, they work for their living, they earn their living by doing good deeds, by helping charitable organizations. And Camilla does virtually nothing like that. She does a little bit of help for the Osteoporosis Society, but she's not seen to be helping anybody except herself.
Charles had spent years learning that palace secrets rarely remain simple. A small omission can become a larger deception once people begin protecting the original omission. One person keeps quiet to protect another. A staff member avoids asking questions. A record becomes less detailed. A private appointment is described as something ordinary. Eventually, the truth can become buried beneath layers of silence. That appeared to be what disturbed Charles most. He was not simply trying to discover whether Camilla had been unfaithful. He was trying to understand whether a separate world had been operating around him while he remained unaware of it. The emotional cost was beginning to show. The man who had entered the room was no longer the only thing Charles remembered. He remembered Camilla's expression when the door opened. He remembered the pause before she answered. He remembered the way the explanation had arrived almost too quickly. Those small details stayed with him. They mattered because people often remember a moment of betrayal through details rather than declarations. A glance, a hesitation, a sudden change in tone, a sentence that sounds reasonable until it is compared with everything that came before it. And Charles now had too many comparisons. Every new record made the original explanation less comfortable, yet the investigation still had one missing piece. There was no clear proof that the relationship was romantic. There was no document explaining the secret. There was only a growing trail of meetings and increasingly careful language. That uncertainty was precisely what made the situation so dangerous. If the truth was harmless, why hide it? If it was damaging, how far did the secret go? And if Camilla had trusted this man with something she could not tell Charles, what would happen when the king finally learned what that secret actually was? The answer was waiting inside the file. The final file was already on the table when Charles entered the room. He did not sit down. He did not ask for tea. He looked at Camilla, then at the folder, then at the man whose name had appeared again and again in the palace records. The question that followed was painfully simple. Who is he? Camilla answered, but her answer did not settle anything. She described the man as a longtime confidant, someone she trusted, someone who had been helping with a private matter that she had not been ready to discuss. According to the accounts surrounding the incident, she insisted that nothing improper had happened between them. But Charles was no longer interested in explanations built from carefully chosen words. He wanted to know why the meetings had been hidden. He wanted to know why the visitor records had not told the whole story. And he wanted to know why one particular meeting had never appeared on the schedule he had been given. The room became painfully quiet. Charles opened the first document, then another, then another. Each page represented another date, another unexplained encounter, another piece of a relationship that had apparently existed just outside his knowledge. Camilla watched him turn the pages. She knew what he was looking at, that much was clear. The question was whether she knew how much he had already discovered. Charles pointed toward one entry. This meeting had happened weeks earlier. Camilla gave an explanation. Charles moved to the next entry. Another meeting, another explanation, then came a third. The explanations began to sound less convincing, not because any single one was impossible, but because they were becoming too numerous. That was the danger. One secret can sometimes be explained. A pattern of secrets becomes something else. Charles finally asked why the man had been allowed repeated private access without his knowledge. Camilla did not answer immediately. That pause said more than a long speech could have. For a moment, the anger in Charles's face seemed to disappear. What remained was disappointment. The kind of disappointment that comes when a person realizes the problem may be larger than the original suspicion. This was no longer simply about another man. It was about trust. It was about the private world that had apparently existed around the marriage. And it was about the possibility that Camilla had decided deliberately that Charles could not be trusted with the truth. If this story has already made you question what was really happening behind those palace doors, take a second to support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who follows royal controversies, and subscribe. Not because a button changes history, but because stories like this disappear when nobody is willing to look closely at the unanswered questions. If Charles was kept in the dark, should the public simply look away too? Charles then placed the most sensitive document in front of her, the meeting that had never been mentioned. The date was important, so was the location, and so was the identity of the person who had arranged it. Camilla looked down. For the first time, her confidence appeared to weaken. Charles asked whether the meeting had taken place. She said yes. He asked why she had not told him. There was no immediate answer. The silence stretched. Then Camilla explained that the matter was personal. Charles replied that personal matters did not explain months of secrecy. The confrontation had reached its real point. Charles had entered the room expecting to determine whether he had been betrayed romantically. Now he was discovering something more complicated. The mysterious man might not have been Camilla's lover at all. He might have been someone she believed was necessary to protect a secret. That was the first major turn in the story. The suspicion of an affair remained. The rumors remained. But the evidence being examined suggested another possibility. Camilla had been trying to control information. She had chosen who could know. She had chosen who could remain outside the conversation. And Charles had been excluded. The reason mattered. Charles asked what the man knew. Camilla hesitated again. He asked what they had been discussing during the private meetings. Another pause. Then she admitted that the man had been helping her deal with something from her past. That sentence changed the atmosphere. Charles leaned forward. Something from her past? What could be so serious that she had needed months of secret meetings to handle it? The account surrounding the story does not establish a verified answer, but the unanswered question became the heart of the controversy. Was Camilla protecting herself? Was she protecting another person? Or was she trying to prevent a deeply personal secret from reaching the palace? Charles wanted the truth. Camilla wanted more time. Those two positions could not survive together. He asked her whether the mysterious man had ever advised her to keep the matter from him. She did not answer directly. Instead, she said that some things were difficult to explain. Charles stared at her. That was not the answer he wanted. He asked again. This time his voice was quieter. Did you believe I had no right to know? Camilla's expression changed. For Charles, that question went beyond jealousy. It was about his position as her husband and as the person ultimately responsible for the institution surrounding them. The private meeting had opened the door. The hidden records had pushed it wider. Now the confrontation was exposing something far more painful. Camilla had made a decision without him, and she had maintained that decision for months. Charles then revealed that the palace team had found correspondence connected to the mysterious man. The messages did not contain an obvious confession. There was no single sentence that could prove an affair. Instead, the language was careful. private, sometimes emotional, and repeatedly focused on secrecy. One exchange appeared to suggest that the truth could